After Alicia brought down the dragon slayer Dorel, Luna was finally returned to Haydn and reunited with his mother. With Dorel's true goal revealed and the real enemy exposed, the question now is what will be Clen's next steps, especially with the mysterious Book of Toa in his hands. With Dorel gone, who will they face next, and what secrets will they uncover? Let's find out. The queen was surprised and asked if Clen truly wished to become this child's magic tutor, to which Clen firmly replied yes. That was what he wanted. Alicia, on the other hand, was shocked and grew nervous, wondering what exactly Clen was planning. Clen, meanwhile, pointed out with a smile that this was his desire. She then spoke to Clen telepathically, calling it ridiculous and pointing out that he was a devil beast in the first place, and that he didn't know anything about magic at all. While this was happening, it seemed like Nellel was holding something back and appeared uncomfortable. Afterward, Alicia motioned toward Clen, pointing out Tawara's reaction, that she seemed puzzled. And of course, Alicia said, she would be. After all, entrusting the royal education of her child to a mysterious boy would naturally raise questions. After a few moments of thought about his request, Tawara finally made a decision and explained that the previous king, before his death, had forbidden the use of magic in their nation. However, she strongly felt that after this war, such a way of thinking must change. She declared that magic was now essential to national defense. She also thought to herself that perhaps this was some kind of divine revelation, while Alicia was taken aback by her reasoning. Hearing all this, Alicia became even more startled, realizing that Tawara truly seemed willing to accept Clen's wish. As Alicia was about to speak to the queen, Clen immediately restrained her, silencing her and forcing her to keep her mouth shut, leaving her no choice but to comply despite her worry. Before anything else, Tawara said she wanted to confirm one thing. She asked if Clen was the one who named the child Luna. Luna reacted happily upon hearing his name, while Clen confirmed that yes, he was indeed the one who gave it. Tawara acknowledged this, which left Alicia confused as to why she reacted that way. Tawara then explained that behind the throne was a place where the true name of the king destined to sit upon it was engraved. She pointed out how strange it was that Luna's name had appeared immediately after the previous king's, even though the child had not yet gone through the naming ceremony. She continued explaining, saying that the name had not been there prior to Clevatess's occupation of the castle, for if it had been, it would have surely caused a major uproar. But now, they could see it there. In other words, the name Luna that Clen had given was recognized by the throne as a true name. This meant Clen possessed the power to bestow a royal true name. Clen simply smiled as he listened to this. Tawara then thought to herself that she was certain this was no coincidence. She commented in her mind that standing before Clen, she could clearly feel it, his dignity and presence. She further noted that his commanding presence over the heroes was just like that of a sage straight out of a fairy tale. While gazing at Luna, who visibly wished to approach Clen, she added that this meeting surely held meaning and greater significance. After considering all this, she told Clen that she understood. She then declared that, in the name of Queen Dowager Tawara Mort, she welcomed him as the royal magic instructor and added that once he fulfilled his duties, he would receive the title of King's Hand. That immediately caught Alicia's attention and left her surprised, prompting Clen to ask what was wrong and whether that title was really great. Alicia explained that it was more than great. The King's Hand was the king's right-hand man and the highest position among royal advisors. Alicia grew uneasy at the thought of Clen receiving such a title, while Clen only smirked and commented not bad. Tawara then added that by royal tradition, education begins at the age of 3, and the title of King's Hand is withheld until the age of 9, when Luna would be crowned and begin his official duties. She asked if that arrangement was acceptable, to which Clen replied that it was no problem. Afterward, he said they would need time to prepare, and as for Clen's 2 companions, the one on his right, referring to Alicia, would not require any wishes. As a hero, he noted, Alicia often said it was shameful to seek rewards. Alicia, unable to do anything about it, only grumbled in her mind in irritation, insisting she had never said any such thing. Clen then touched Nellel's shoulder, and just as he was about to ask her what reward she wanted, Nellel suddenly reacted, shouted yes sir, and began apologizing repeatedly to Tawara. Tawara was confused as to why she was apologizing, prompting Clen to explain that Nello felt unworthy to provide her milk to the future king. This revelation shocked Tawara, and Nello shyly explained that she was merely the daughter of a lowly bandit slave, questioning how she could ever properly apologize for defiling the mouth of someone who would become king. Clen informed Tawara that Nello wouldn't listen to anything he said, which immediately made Tawara realize what she needed to do. She approached Nello, took her hands, and gently asked her to raise her head, startling her. Tawara told her that to even say she was unworthy was absolutely absurd. Tears began to form in Tawara's eyes as she admitted that when her child was missing, her greatest worry was whether Luna was hungry or crying because of it. She pointed out that status didn't matter. Nello was their true benefactor. With heartfelt sincerity, she added that she was truly, deeply grateful to her. Flustered by these words, Nello said they were far too undeserved, to which Clen added that in truth, without her, Luna would have died long before facing any danger, and that when danger did come, she protected him with her life, not even knowing of his royal status. Clen then emphasized that Nello was the only wet nurse he could trust with Luna, and requested Tawara allow her to stay by his side until his education began. Tawara happily agreed, saying she would be quite busy with official duties. She noted that nothing could reassure her more than knowing Nello would continue as Luna's wet nurse. Clen also added that while Nello might not be educated, he could guarantee the quality of her milk and her ability as a guardian, and that she had already grown close to him. When they turned to look at Luna, they saw him nearly fall off the throne, alarming everyone and prompting them to shout a warning. Thankfully, Nello quickly rushed forward and caught him just in time. A nervous Tawara remarked that she had looked away for only a moment and already Luna almost fell, then thanked Nello, who brushed it off humbly. Clen figured Luna was likely hungry, which was probably why he had tried to climb down. After that, Tawara asked Nello if she could begin immediately. She informed her that she would be the king's personal wet nurse and remain by his side, and that from now on, they would provide everything she needed: food, clothing, and shelter, so she should keep that in mind. Nello immediately responded with yes, my lady, sounding unsure, prompting Tawara to correct her, saying the proper response was, as you command, and that she should address her as Your Majesty the Queen Dowager, since certain etiquette must be observed. Nello immediately tried it out, saying as you command, Your Majesty, earning Tawara's praise. The queen said she believed they would get along wonderfully. Watching this unfold, Alicia quietly thought to herself how happy she was for Nello, who had just received such a major promotion. She wanted to congratulate her out loud, but her mouth remained sealed. Before long, she realized that no one was paying her any attention, which made her scream inwardly in irritation that she wanted to speak and join the conversation too. In the next scene, we moved outside the royal furnace room. Fabio had arrived with several Haydenian troops carrying mining tools. Upon seeing the collapsed door of the chamber, he pointed out that the royal furnace must have been buried behind it. He instructed his men to split up, lift the stones, and dig out the furnace. Clen and Alicia then arrived at the scene, and upon seeing them, Clen remarked on how pointless their efforts were. He stated that he already possessed the true form of the furnace, the Book of Toa. He briefly showed it to Alicia, who immediately commented that, as expected, he had no intention of returning it. Clen then explained that since Vordian also sought the book, he couldn't entrust it to mere humans. Clen then added that besides, he doubted those people could even use the furnace even if he returned the book. After that, he wondered aloud what would happen to Hydrate, to which Alicia replied uncertainly that for now, they would probably build a new castle. She pointed out that they would need to clear out all the rubble before laying down new stones and estimated that it would take them years before it could become a proper castle again. Clen then asked if it would take that long until Luna was grown, to which Alicia added that she felt sorry for him if it did. Alicia added that maybe it would be finished by the time Luna was crowned king, which made Clen think for a moment. She then reminded Clen that she would say this again. He was the one who destroyed all of it. Clen suddenly said that Luna's education would begin in 2.5 years and would last for 6 years after that, prompting Alicia to respond irritably that she wasn't asking about that. She then added that besides, Clen knew absolutely nothing about magic in the first place, and questioned what he intended to do and why he came up with such a ridiculous proposal. Clen pointed out that the Book of Toa was Vortian's objective and that one way or another, he needed to learn magic. Fortunately, they had more than enough time, and he was certain they would figure something out. In the next scene, we moved outside the castle gate, where everyone had gathered to see Queen Tawara off. Here, Queen Tawara boarded a royal carriage and spoke to her subordinates before leaving. She reminded Fabio that she would be leaving things here for now, to which Fabio immediately agreed. She then called Nello and Clen, saying she would continue to entrust Luna to the two of them. Clen responded with indeed, while Nello gave the proper response she had been taught, and Luna waved while calling her mama. Tawara waved back and then declared that until the day their king could stand on his own, she, as his mother, would protect the country. After that, she instructed the coachman and her knight bodyguards to proceed with their journey, which the coachman immediately did. As they watched the queen leave, Fabio commented that Estlin was leading a meeting between the warring nations and wished Her Majesty, the Queen Dowager, the best of luck. After that, it was explained to us that the two great nations of the Dorns, Estlin and Bolet, were divided by the Great Dorn River that flowed north to south, with Bolet lying to the east and Estlin to the west. It was further explained that they were once a single nation but split due to a feud between brothers roughly 400 years ago, and they had been in conflict ever since. While showing us how the war unfolded, it was added that during these 400 years of history, nearly all bridges across the Dorn River were destroyed. However, one remained, the ancient bridge spanning a deep valley in the middle of the river, made from a single massive stone without any seams. It was said to have been named either because the ancient race built it, or because it was tall enough for the ancient race to pass beneath. It was also pointed out to us that this was now a standoff between the two sides, as we were shown the crests of both nations. After this explanation, we moved to the center of the said bridge, where Rod awaited the opening of Bolet's gate. When it opened, he remarked that they were here. From the gate emerged a royal carriage accompanied by several knights serving as bodyguards, some mounted on horses and others on foot. Behind the carriage, a large cage was being pulled on a wagon. Rod then noticed that this was the carriage of Emperor Bay's wards of Bolet. Rod immediately shouted at them to stop there, declaring that only those approved could step onto the bridge and that everyone else must return inside their gate. He added that anyone who broke this agreement would be considered as declaring war against each other. Then, the gate behind Rod opened, and from it emerged a figure who looked like a king despite his youthful appearance. He called out to Rod, addressing him as Commander Royce, and told him to stand back. Rod immediately obeyed and addressed him as Your Majesty. Afterward, Rod entered their gate, and the one riding in Bolet's carriage began to emerge, muttering the words, "Oh dear." We were then shown Emperor Bay's wards himself, who commented that he had heard the old man of Estlin had retired and that the youngest had ascended the throne. But mockingly, he added that he didn't expect such a child, one who hadn't even grown out of diapers, would take his place. He called it anticlimactic and sarcastically wondered if this was the new trend for babies to take the throne. The king of Estlin did not let Bays speak freely and silenced him, calling him the snake of a defeated country. He introduced himself as Uriel Esrel, the king of Estlin. He said that this was the name of the victor and told Bays to remember it. Bays responded that it was absurd to hear someone claim victory when they only arrived after the battle had already ended. He added that normally, he would reject such meaningless negotiations, but admitted that the loss of Doral from their main force was indeed a heavy blow. By the way, he continued, he didn't see Uriel's guards and asked if sending his division commander far away was really a wise decision. Uriel replied that of course it was, as one of his guards began to emerge from behind him. This guard wore a distinct helmet with moose-like antlers and carried a massive greatsword, standing behind Uriel with an aura of confidence. Uriel introduced him as the strongest swordsman of the modern era, the sword Saint Owen Kors, his chosen guard. Bays laughed at this and remarked that since they could only choose one, it was natural to choose the strongest. In that case, he added, he too would select a suitable individual. Several guards then brought forward the wagon carrying a cage made of wood and metal. As Rod stood atop the castle gate, We were shown crossbowmen prepared as a precaution in case Bullet decided to attack. When Rod glanced toward their enemies, he saw the wagon and was surprised to notice it was an animal cage. Even Uriel and Owen stared with visible curiosity at what Baze presented. Soon after, Baze opened the cage, and even the weight of its door alone caused a loud impact on the ground. A large man began walking out from inside, and Uriel noticed shackles on the man's wrists. Moments later, the man's full appearance was revealed, a muscular figure with long hair and a bird tattoo on his left arm. Uriel was puzzled that Baze had brought a prisoner, but as the man took deep breaths, Baze pointed out that this was no ordinary prisoner. He introduced him as Zazek, leader of the bandit group known as the Crows, also called the hero hunter, Zazek. We were shown a close-up of Zazek's face, bearing a scar along the bridge of his nose. Unexpectedly, the bandit leader leaped high into the air, drawing the attention of both Uriel and Owen. As he descended, Zazek prepared to unleash a meteor kick, which Owen managed to block with his greatsword. The impact of the strike created a strong gust of wind around them, forcing even Uriel to brace himself from being blown away. Zazek commented on how fine Owen's sword was, but Owen only stared blankly and responded with a swing, forcing Zazek to retreat back to Baze's side. Zazek laughed afterward, while Rod quickly asked Uriel if he was all right, to which Uriel affirmed and said there was no problem. Suddenly, a woman's voice came from behind Uriel, asking if the two sides were done with their greetings, causing them all to turn toward her. Baze smiled, while Uriel remained serious. It was revealed that Queen Tawara had arrived alongside Alicia. Adding to her question, Tawara said that if they were finished, then they should proceed at once, the pursuit of war responsibility and the subsequent negotiations. As Alicia and Queen Tawara walked toward King Uriel and Owen, they both stared at them, and Alicia immediately noticed the sharp look in their eyes. Emperor Baze then commented that she had arrived and revealed to them that she was the woman who defeated Doral, Alicia Glenfall. Upon hearing this information, Zazek grinned widely, while Baze smirked from behind him. Zazek and Owen's eyes sharpened with intense focus as they carved Alicia's name into their memory. Uriel also fixed his gaze on her, judging and sizing her up, which made Alicia uneasy because of how intensely they were glaring at her. Tawara then pointed out that they couldn't be blamed, adding that Alicia was currently the talk of the times. After all, she was the one who had defeated the invincible General Doral. She further pointed out that it was no exaggeration to say Alicia's presence had sparked and brought about this particular gathering. However, she admitted that she never imagined the Emperor of Bullet would bring along such a bandit leader. Alicia smirked at the thought and commented that, thinking about it, Broko did say that their real boss had been imprisoned. So this Zazek must be the boss Broko was referring to, and Alicia wondered if he knew she had wiped out his bandit group. She added that this guy looks like a bear, and silently wished he didn't know. The shackles around Zazek rattled as he suddenly moved, pointing his finger at Alicia, and asking if what he saw was the waterfall splitter. He pointed out that it was supposed to rest deep beneath the waters of Elbea's vertical shaft for hundreds of years, and even he had never managed to obtain it. He then asked why Alicia had it, and that question confirmed Alicia's worst fear, making her nervous and realize she was in trouble. Baze leaned in toward Zazek and mentioned that, speaking of which, just a few days ago he had received news that Zazek's hideout in Elbea's shaft was attacked and destroyed by an individual. Apparently, the culprit was a one-eyed female swordsman. Zazek's ears twitched upon hearing this, and rage visibly built up in him as he grit his teeth and muttered how interesting this was. Sensing his bloodlust, Alicia immediately prepared for battle, gripping her sword. Suddenly, Owen slammed his sheathed greatsword hard onto the ground, and that single motion unleashed an immense force around him. The resulting gust of wind blasted across the bridge, its pressure so overwhelming that even Tawara, Alicia, Zazek, and Baze felt a chill run down their spines. Owen glared at them with deadly seriousness, and Uriel spoke, stating that the guards were not to interfere since this place was designated for the national representatives to negotiate. Tawara and Baze seemed to understand the situation and simply watched him in silence. Owen then told Uriel he would set up chairs and a table in the middle of the bridge, to which Uriel praised him and said that's good, while Baze dismissively remarked that they could do whatever they wanted. Alicia observed quietly as Tawara scoffed. Not long after, they all gathered at the bridge's center, where knights had arranged the chairs and table. When Baze noticed that they had set up a round table, he commented that it was as if they were saying everyone there was equal. Uriel immediately corrected him, saying they were not equals. He only did this because he knew Baze wouldn't sit otherwise, so he told him not to be so arrogant. Baze scoffed again, while Tawara sat down with Alicia standing behind her. Baze then sat down as well, arrogantly propping both feet up on the table and asking what exactly they wanted to discuss by calling them here. He added that surely they didn't expect him to apologize for starting this war, and pointed out that if both countries wanted to join forces and retaliate, they could do it in silence. Baze then noted that since they had lost General Doral, one of their main forces, perhaps the others might finally have a chance to win against them, a statement that Tawara agreed with. After that, she firmly declared that from this moment onward, Haydn was severing its diplomatic relations with Bolet and was also banning the sale of swords forged in Haydn. She added that punishments had already been set for anyone who would break these rules. She then stated that should war break out, she was declaring that they would ally themselves with Eslan and provide full support. Upon hearing this, Baze sneered and said that Tawara couldn't even fight her own battles, so she went crying to Eslan for help, calling it pathetic. He followed it up by asking if she still considered herself a nation's representative. Alicia's irritation was visible on her face after hearing such remarks. Tawara then responded with a firm voice that no matter what Baze said, this was how Haydn fights. She added that even if their castle were to fall, their swordsmiths and their craftsmanship will never die. So she asked that he shouldn't underestimate their power and sharpness. King Uriel added to her words, saying that in fact, as soon as Haydn, who had been neutral, joined them, victory was assured without even needing to fight. He then said that in this war, Eslan's casualties amounted to only a few hundred soldiers. Commander Royce was still alive, and their main force remained unharmed. And now that their greatest threat, General Doral, and his army of 10,000 were gone, there was no way they could lose. He added that he was surprised to see Baze bring that bandit leader here, pointing out that it was clear proof of desperation, as though he was openly declaring that no one stronger than Doral remained in Bolet. Uriel stated that Baze's desperation was obvious, to which Baze only responded with a smirk. Uriel then explained that the only reason he called them here was because their victory was already certain, calling Baze by his full name as he said it. Moreover, he said that Baze had mentioned earlier, if they attacked without a word, this would be over quickly, but Uriel clarified that the reason they weren't doing so was because he believed there was still room for negotiation. Hearing this, Baze asked room for what, to which Uriel answered, room for Doral. He explained that Doral had been exploring magic on his own, particularly focusing on the crystallization of magical ore and the technology to embed it into the body to draw out magical power. Uriel also revealed that these experiments used human infants and monster offspring as test subjects, pointing out that such methods were horrible and inhumane. Alicia and Tawara were both shocked upon hearing this information. Alicia anxiously thought to herself that so this was where all the infants sold by Raven Broco ended up. Tawara, her voice laced with disbelief, asked Uriel if that was true. Uriel confirmed it and explained that they had captured one of Doral's subordinates and interrogated them, and the testimony aligned with the facts they already knew. Tawara was utterly shocked to hear that infants were indeed used in those experiments, and she was overwhelmed as she commented on how outrageous it was. Alicia, meanwhile, thought irritably to herself that this also meant the same could have happened to Luna. She then realized something and muttered, "But wait a minute." She pointed out that Doral was supposed to be under the control of Vordian's devil blood this whole time. So she asked herself, why would he allow that general to conduct magical research? She noted that magic made people stronger, and that should have been considered a threat to devil beasts, so she questioned why would Vordian allow it. She wondered if this could be connected to the reason why Vordian targeted the Royal Forge and pondered over what his objective might be. After that, her eyes turned toward Zazek, and she wondered inwardly what his role in this might be, and should she confront him about who had been buying infants and what was being done to them. As she stared at him, Zazik noticed and turned to meet her gaze, grinning, to which she responded with a serious glare of her own. After listening to everything Uriel said, Baze scoffed and asked what exactly he wanted, telling him to just say it outright. Uriel replied that what he wanted was the location Doral had used for his magical research, along with all the results obtained from it. Baze then asked what they would get in return, to which Uriel answered that they wouldn't attack for 2 years. Baze questioned him about that statement, while Tawara immediately stood up and told Uriel to wait, asking if what he meant by that was that they were supposed to wait 2 years for sanctions. She pointed out that Haydn had already suffered greatly because of the war. She explained that their agreement to prioritize providing swords, magical swords, to Eslan had been made with the expectation that corresponding sanctions would follow. She added that without those sanctions, their people would never accept the arrangement. And yet, despite everything, Uriel was still giving them a 2-year grace period. So Uriel asked that Tawara shouldn't misunderstand. He explained to her that Eslan's reason for imposing sanctions on Bolet wasn't out of pity for Haydn, nor was it because they wanted to monopolize the use of magic swords. He pointed out that it was because Bolet had tried to outmaneuver Eslan. Tawara was visibly shocked upon hearing that, and Uriel added that if the issue were simply about sanctions, trade restrictions alone would have sufficed. He said that while Haydn's wounds were deep, when it came to Hydrate itself, almost all of the destruction had been caused by the Devil Beast King, Clevatess. He described it as a natural disaster and self-inflicted. The real problem, he said, was that Doral had tried to use the chaos to obtain a great power. He added that, according to their division commander, it was a power capable of changing the entire world. After stating this, he emphasized that they couldn't ignore something like that. He further explained that many things in the land of Edthia had unclear origins, from the legends of the hero to even this very bridge, and everyone knew they were works of the ancient people who had long since vanished. The same, he said, applied to magic. It was only recently that they began to understand it, yet much of it still remained a mystery. Even so, it was possible that Doral had discovered how to solve that mystery, and they couldn't allow Bolet to monopolize it. He stressed that they could never permit that to happen. Baze let out a low, arrogant laugh, followed by a mocking grin, before sarcastically commenting that now he understood the situation. So Uriel himself was the biggest opportunistic thief of them all, he said, pointing out that he took advantage of their weakened army to try and steal everything. He added that perhaps even the delay of their main force's arrival had been intentional, and questioned whether Uriel had calculated that, by using the Sword Saint, he could defeat Doral after he'd already exhausted himself achieving his goal. Tawara was shocked upon hearing this and glanced at Uriel, though Uriel's serious expression and that of his chosen soldier Owen didn't falter. Baze chuckled again briefly, and after recalling Uriel's statement about giving them 2 years, his tone turned serious as he said that they were undervaluing them. He called out to Zazik as if giving him a signal, prompting Zazik to ask if he was certain. In no time, Zazik easily broke his shackles with brute strength, prompting Owen to immediately draw and ready his greatsword, in preparation for battle. Tawara was startled by the sudden escalation, while Alicia stepped in front of her, drawing her waterfall splitter with a worried expression at what might happen next. Baze then pointed out that now that all the important leaders were gathered here, what reason was there to wait 2 years? As Zazik began laughing maniacally, he started emitting an ominous aura and bloodlust, as Baze challenged them by asking why not decide right here and now who was the strongest. Owen's expression grew even more serious as he released his own powerful aura, and Alicia's face clearly showed her concern. Zazik then commented that this was good and he's fortunate, since there were 2 sacred treasures here. In her thoughts, Alicia anxiously questioned what was with this man, feeling an overwhelming pressure from him even though he wasn't carrying a sacred treasure. She even wondered if the person standing before her was truly human. Their eyes locked, and Alicia could still feel that this battle was going to be difficult. Then Zazik suddenly raised both his hands and said he had an idea, suggesting that Alicia and Owen attack him together, saying it would make things twice as fun. Owen seemed ticked off by the remark, his eyes narrowing dangerously as he prepared to charge. However, Uriel stopped him, saying to wait, adding that he had anticipated this would happen. After that, he declared that now the real negotiations would begin. He asked Baze what exactly he wanted, but informed him up front that the handing over of all magical research facilities and Doral's research was non-negotiable and that he wouldn't budge on that point, to which Baze simply listened carefully. Once he made that clear, he then asked what Baze wanted besides that, and Baze smirked, commenting that he really was a snot-nosed brat for demanding such a thing. Baze's expression then turned serious as he began explaining that Doral had been free to do whatever he wanted, so he personally knew nothing about the details of what Doral did or how he did it. All he knew, he said, was that Doral had been buying infants and monster offspring, but he had no idea what was being done to them, and frankly, he added, he never wanted to know. This made Zazik raise a brow and ask if that meant they were done here, but Baze continued explaining, saying that all they had ever needed from Doral was power, and in that regard, Doral had served them well. They were only starting to investigate things now, but he admitted that it was proving difficult, simply put, because Doral had been extremely secretive. He also pointed out that even finding the location itself was another problem. Both Uriel and Tawara asked about the location he was referring to, and Baze explained that they were more than willing to open their doors to that location, allowing them to investigate it as much as they wanted. However, Baze added, since they themselves had no knowledge about the back entrance that Doral used, they would have to enter through the front. But that front entrance is restricted to only authorized personnel. As long as they respected that restriction, he said, they could do whatever they pleased, but they shouldn't exclude those already stationed there. He pointed out that those were his conditions. Uriel then asked him if he was seriously telling them to accept a restriction that only allowed authorized personnel, asking if this was a joke, but Baze replied that he was telling them to simply pose as authorized personnel. After all, he pointed out that place valued tradition, to which Tawara questioned his statement about that place valuing traditions. Baze continued, adding that they would even provide a means to make it easier for them to enter, and if they were able to locate Doral's secret room, then whatever secrets were inside would belong to them. As he said this, Zazik could be seen starting to grow restless and visibly bored with all the talk. Baze then pointed out that the time limit would be 2 years, the same as Uriel had proposed, and once those 2 years were up, the doors would close without warning. He added that this meant a 2-year ceasefire, a peace agreement. How much they could accomplish within that time, he said, would depend entirely on them. Uriel then asked if this peace agreement would also extend to Haydn, to which Baze immediately replied, of course. He added that it would officially be framed as disclosure of Bolet's magical knowledge. He also stated that while trade sanctions might remain, the severing of diplomatic relations must be suspended for now. He then asked Tawara if that was acceptable, and she replied that if they could expose all of Doral's deeds, then it would be fine. However, she added that even in that case, they would still require words of condemnation for Doral and an apology for his actions. Furthermore, they would separately pursue individual crimes such as infant trafficking. Baze answered indifferently, telling them to do whatever they wished. Following that, Tawara pointed out that the real question was about the location and asked where exactly this place was. Just as Baze was about to answer, the scene shifted to several students chatting as they passed by a teacher and exchanged greetings. After that brief cutaway, Baze finally revealed that the location was Solsein, the oldest seminary in Edsia, which had recently established a department of magic. We were then shown the appearance of the place he mentioned, which looked very much like a school. The Solsein Seminary is located at the eastern end of Sakiria Bay, near the east of the mouth of the Dorn River. This historic school, said to have been built atop ancient ruins, is lined with numerous buildings of varying sizes. Children between the ages of 12 and 17 resided here. At present, it was considered an essential stepping stone for the elite of Bolet. Because of this, the area was strictly protected from all external threats. The seminary was enclosed by towering outer walls that prevented outsiders from entering. Security around these walls was exceedingly strict. Even for the students themselves, the walls were so high and the process so arduous that entry was incredibly difficult. Once inside, leaving was not permitted except on certain special days. Within this closed world, students learned about culture and morality, creativity and fighting spirit, as well as the skills necessary to lead society. But beyond this, there was another reason why the place was so heavily guarded. A priest inside the seminary explained that the symbol he wore symbolized the sun, which bestowed blessings and life upon the world. The earth is Edthea, and the sun represents God. Eld is the people who live there, and the meaning of Edthea is land of God. Eldism, he explained, is a doctrine meant for all people of Edthea to praise the one God and learn all things through him. This doctrine was not exclusive to Bolit, but extended to all nations. The priest was speaking with none other than Emperor Bey's wards, who had arrived at the seminary. Politely, the priest asked the emperor what business had brought him to their school that day. The emperor addressed him as Cardinal Elro Romain. He then asked if he should just say headmaster. The cardinal replied that within these walls, simply calling him headmaster would do. The emperor asked how many years he had been there, and the headmaster replied that it had been 19 years. Time flies. The emperor reflected for a moment, and then asked if he ever missed Syria, the headquarters of Eld religion in Eslan. The headmaster answered no, not at all. Solsein itself was a holy place important to the Eld religion. As headmaster of this school, the days he spent speaking with students who held bright futures were true joy to him, an important gift from God. Besides, Syria was not so far away. He could go there whenever he wished. The emperor acknowledged that there were indeed no restrictions on the Eldian priests crossing the border. Correct, the headmaster agreed. They were servants of God, and there were no borders drawn on God's map. Of course, the headmaster understood that the Eld faith was a doctrine guiding people toward who they were meant to be, long before any conflicts had arisen. It was a privilege born from the strict principle of separating church and state. The emperor pondered aloud that he had heard Dorel was also a devoted believer. That was true, the headmaster confirmed, and he lamented the news of Dorel's passing. Dorel had contributed greatly to the establishment of their magic department. The emperor praised this, noting that the magic department Dorel had created had achieved remarkable results. Bolit's leading position in the field of magic was thanks to him and to the seminary's mage training program. The headmaster took pride in this recognition. Because of that, the emperor asked whether the headmaster had heard anything about Dorel's secret room. The headmaster was surprised at the mention of it. The emperor clarified, it was indeed the secret room, an important military facility. However, he admitted he didn't know its location, as he had entrusted everything to Dorel. Though slightly annoyed by Dorel's secretive nature, he wondered if the headmaster might have at least heard rumors about it. But the headmaster shook his head. He had heard nothing at all. The emperor asked if that was the reason for his visit to Solsein. The emperor denied it. He explained that, in response to the impact of Dorel's defeat, they had decided to expand their exchange in the field of magic. For this, he needed the headmaster's cooperation. When asked what kind of cooperation he sought, the emperor clarified that he simply wanted the seminary to accept foreign students, exchange students from all corners of Edthea, including Eslan and Haydn. Since the Eld religion recognized no borders, he believed there would be no issue in accommodating them. The headmaster agreed warmly, saying they would gladly welcome them. The emperor added that the seminary's strict security and isolation were partly why they had chosen it. They did not want enemies moving about freely. It would only be for 2 years, he explained, but he hoped the headmaster would be patient and watch over them. The headmaster assured him that patience was unnecessary. This was a wonderful opportunity to share the word of God with children of other nations. He gladly accepted the responsibility. Both were pleased with this agreement. The emperor noted that he had expected the headmaster to accept and would inform the board immediately. The headmaster approved, while the emperor departed. As he left, the priest offered him a blessing, remarking that the head of the board was a devout and intelligent person. Surely, she would be pleased with the decision of her father. The emperor glanced back with a smile before finally departing Solsein, leaving the headmaster behind. The scene shifted to the capital of Bolit, Vyes, where the Baelstrin castle stood. Here, the emperor's daughter voiced her objection to his recent decision. When asked why she opposed it, Milea explained that while the peace agreement itself was acceptable, Solsein had long been a training school for Bolit's elite. Both its students and graduates understood this heritage. Admitting international students in their current situation, she argued, would only create confusion. Several of the current students had even lost their parents in the recent war. The emperor countered that only a small number of foreign students and teachers would be admitted. He was certain the headmaster would accept this arrangement if it came as a decision from the board. He added that this would be an excellent opportunity for the students to test themselves against those from rival nations while still in training, an education in itself. Milea was about to protest again, but her father apologized, saying he would not accept a refusal as an answer. This was an agreement between nations. If they failed to uphold it, war would break out once more. He asked her to handle the matter properly. As the emperor rose to his feet, Milea asked him who the new teacher he planned to bring in would be. Back at Solsein, the students gathered for an assembly. Vice Headmaster Rob Carson called everyone's attention. He began by saying that war was painful. The previous conflict had ended with an unfortunate outcome for their nation, yet something valuable had come from it: hope. Conflict, he explained, could also become a path to better understanding one another. This, he said, was an opportunity given by God, a force to help them move forward. Through a diplomatic agreement, Bullet would now strengthen its ties with other nations. Students from abroad would soon arrive to study at their school. The announcement sparked whispers among the students. Some remarked that the rumors were true, while others were in disbelief. A voice hushed them, reminding everyone to stay quiet during assemblies. Rob continued, suggesting that they begin by getting to know each other. After all, to know others was also to know oneself. He then announced that they had decided to add new teachers to their staff and would like to introduce them. Calling them up to the stage, Rob introduced the new staff members. He encouraged everyone to take note of their faces and names. Among them was Nay. Rob prompted them to introduce themselves one by one. The man wearing glasses stepped forward first, smiling warmly. He said he was pleased to meet them. His name was Matthew Barnes, and he would be teaching history. If they ever had questions, they were welcome to approach him. The girls in the crowd blushed at his charming smile, and one student whispered that he might be her type. Another girl beside her agreed. The boys, however, were far less pleased with his presence. Next to introduce himself was the braided man standing beside Matthew. He stated his name was Onii-Chan, and he would be teaching physical education. He explained that he was often misunderstood because of his hairstyle, but assured everyone he was a fighter, capable of excelling at any ball sport or combat sport. He warned them to prepare themselves, because his training would be intense. As he spoke, Matthew thought to himself, now that they were on an undercover mission, the first thing he needed to do was blend in as a teacher. They had only 2 years. Until then, no one could know that he was actually Rod Royce from Estlin. Likewise, Mikkel, now going by the name Onii-Chan, had to keep his true identity secret. Whatever happened, they needed to uncover clues about Dorel's secret room. Beside Mikkel stood Nay, visibly nervous. Vice Headmaster Rob then introduced her to the students, noting that she was a graduate of their very own school and would assist with the magic classes. This revelation surprised the students. They hadn't expected someone so young to be an alumnus. They soon noticed the crystal embedded on her forehead, recognizing it as a genuine magic crystal. Impressed, they murmured among themselves that she must be a mage, while others wondered if she had served in the military. Rod's gaze lingered on Nay, and upon noticing, she grew self-conscious under the weight of everyone's stares. Stammering slightly, she introduced herself as Nay Schiffinlitz and asked them to take care of her. Someone in the crowd even called out encouragement, telling her to stay strong. But how did she end up here? 2 weeks earlier, after the battle had ended, Nay wandered aimlessly, still in shock from the events, especially the defeat of Dorel and her companion, Maynard. Lost in thought, she was suddenly summoned. Someone called her over, telling her the Emperor wanted to see her. She could hardly believe what she'd just heard. Without delay, Nay went straight to Balestrin Castle to meet him. The Emperor addressed her by name, Nay Schiffinlitz, and acknowledged that he knew what she had been through during the battle. He said he was glad she had returned alive. After all, she was the only mage under Dorel's command who had survived. Sweat formed on Nay's brow as anxiety tightened in her chest. She feared she was about to be reprimanded. Perhaps they had discovered she had helped transport the hero to Hydrat. She braced herself, expecting to be held responsible, perhaps even executed. The thoughts left her trembling. But the Emperor's reason for calling her was simpler than she feared. It was about Dorel's secret room. Nay was caught off guard by the mention of it. The emperor explained that Dorel had created the magic department at Solsein and had recruited top students for his army. Both she and the insect user Maynard Swan had been inside that room at least once, during the transplantation of their magic crystals. Unfortunately, Maynard had been captured by the Eslan army and was now imprisoned in their underground jail. That left only Nay as the sole person who could provide information. The emperor demanded she reveal everything she knew about the secret room, promising to pardon her actions afterward. Shaking in fear, Nay struggled to speak as the emperor smiled at her. She stammered that the room was less of a room and more of a vast building filled with many small, dark chambers. From within those chambers, she recalled hearing groans and strange noises. She had been guided deep inside, walking an unmeasurable distance. She didn't know exactly how far she had walked or what kinds of places she had passed through. Her memories of the place were hazy, as if the surroundings had been stained with blood. Beyond that, she couldn't remember anything more. Nay admitted that she could no longer tell whether she had been walking or standing still, or even if her eyes had been open or closed. The only memory that lingered was the pain, intense, overwhelming pain. She recalled something filling her mouth. Before she knew it, she was floating in hole, a big hole with a spiral staircase. At some point, she must have lost consciousness. When she awoke, she found herself lying in her dormitory bed. General Dorel was already at the door, preparing to leave. He glanced back at her briefly and remarked that it was fine, but that it wasn't over yet. With that, he stepped outside to attend to whatever was next. That was the last memory Nay had. She couldn't recall how she had arrived there or what had happened afterward. As she recounted her story, the emperor merely responded, "I see." He remarked that while this was the first time he had heard mention of a hole, everything she described matched reports he had gathered so far. He hadn't expected much more, so he allowed her to leave. Nay nodded in relief, but suddenly, a stray memory surfaced. When the emperor asked her what it was, she hesitated, unsure if it was relevant. She explained that she remembered standing in front of a mirror. She believed she had still been a student at the time, as she wore her school uniform in that memory. However, she added that she didn't recall any mirror like that existing in Solsein. The emperor's expression shifted. He seemed intrigued by this new information. Calling her by her full name, Nay Schiffenlitz, he told her he had another task for her. Back in the present, Nay hadn't expected the task the emperor mentioned to turn out to be teaching. She quietly admitted to herself that she had never been particularly good at school. She never fit in with groups either. Truthfully, she wanted nothing more than to go home. After Nay's introduction, Vice Headmaster Rob concluded the presentation of the new teachers. He added that there was actually one more teacher scheduled to arrive, but due to certain circumstances, their arrival had been delayed. He reminded everyone not to get overly excited just because new teachers were joining. They should listen to the voice of God and focus on their studies. That was all he had to say. Rod, standing among the staff, couldn't help but wonder who this additional teacher might be. Perhaps they were another guard from Bolet, someone who might recognize him in Mikkel. Or could it even be someone from Haydn? Could the hero Alicia be coming here in disguise? The thought nagged at him. As Rod scanned the faces of the students, he felt a strange sensation, a powerful presence reminiscent of Dorel's. Was it his imagination? He hoped so. His gaze shifted toward the other staff members, assessing them as well. Soon, the morning assembly ended. Vice Headmaster Rob dismissed everyone, instructing the students to return to their classrooms. As the students walked off, chatter filled the air about the announcements and the new teachers. One student commented that the new instructors seemed strong. Another agreed, speculating about their abilities. A girl then asked if he thought they could win, though she was teased for asking. She turned to Ray for his opinion. When asked directly whether he believed they could win, Ray addressed Mary, agreeing with Andrew's earlier remark. It was a pointless question. Their generation, he claimed, could not possibly lose. Mary agreed with his statement. Ray added that older generations could never keep up with the progress of modern magic, and he doubted that the two on the left had any capability to use magic at all. So they're out of the question. He was about to reveal who he believed their true competition should be, but his statement was abruptly cut off. Switching to Kashu, a village at the southern edge of Haydn, Clen was quietly drinking coffee outside when he heard someone shouting. A voice repeatedly called his name. It turned out to be Alicia, who stormed toward him wearing only a towel, visibly upset. She complained loudly that upon waking up, she had discovered her body had shrunk. She demanded to know what had happened and accused him, insisting he explain what he had done to her body. Once inside, Alicia slammed her hands against the table and demanded answers from Clen. She repeated her question, asking what he had done and why her body had suddenly shrunk. Clen calmly explained that he had been granted full authority over the matter by Queen Dowager Tawara. Alicia's original body, he said, was unsuitable for their infiltration plan, so he reduced her size. Alicia was utterly shocked at what he had done. He clarified that he used devil's blood to achieve this, gradually hiding her body into her shadow. The process had been troublesome and had taken 7 nights to complete. Alicia was even more stunned to hear it had taken 7 full days and nights. Clen continued, saying he had taken his time to understand the technique thoroughly, but assured her that next time, he could perform it instantly, so she should be happy about that. Alicia retorted that there was nothing to celebrate. Her body, she insisted, was not a toy. For infiltration, a simple disguise would have been enough. She suggested she could simply act as a teacher instead. Clen dismissed the idea outright. He asked what exactly she could teach. Alicia hesitated, then suggested swordsmanship or perhaps the way of the hero. As expected, Clen found neither convincing, pointing out that Alicia should already know she was useless outside of battle. Alicia bristled at being called useless by a beast who wasn't even human. But Clen added that even he wasn't qualified to teach. That was why they would be infiltrating Solsein as exchange students from Haydn. Their transfer, he announced, would begin tomorrow. Alicia was shocked at how soon it was. Moments later, another realization struck her. Neither of them looked like they were from Haydn. She wondered if that wouldn't be a problem. Clen paused, acknowledging she had a point. Then, without warning, he raised his hand toward her, preparing to act. Panic flashed across Alicia's face as she pleaded for him to stop. She retracted her words, telling him to forget she had said anything. But it was too late. Clen had already begun. All Alicia could do was scream in protest. The scene shifted to the next day at Solsein. Students were already walking toward the academy gates, greeting one another with cheerful good mornings. Conversations buzzed about the highly anticipated arrival of the exchange students that day. One student mentioned hearing that the newcomers were already 5th years. Since the program only lasted 6 years, it seemed the plan was for them to graduate within 2. Word spread that they had already been placed in the 5th-year dorms, which surprised many. Another student pointed toward the building, wondering aloud if the person standing in front of the dorm was one of the exchange students. They whispered about the individual's unusual nose, concluding that it must be the transfer student. Alicia, who stood there uncomfortably, was acutely aware of the stares fixed on her. Embarrassed, she thought to herself that there really was something strange about her nose. Clen, standing beside her, called her a fool. He pointed out that while her hair color was the same, her facial features perfectly replicated those of people from Haydn. He said the finishing touches on her disguise were flawless. Alicia bristled at the comment and demanded to know why he looked the same. Clen clarified that his form had originally been copied from a boy from Haydn. There was nothing wrong with it. Alicia struggled to understand. Clen countered with a question, asking if she didn't think it was odd that the Queen Mother herself hadn't said anything about her appearance upon seeing her. It was as if she hadn't recognized Alicia at all. Perhaps, Clen mused, the Queen simply couldn't recall the faces of her child servants. Alicia, half-jokingly, added that maybe the Queen wouldn't even notice with those extra horns. But she quickly realized Clen seemed tense, his focus shifting behind them. She asked what was wrong. Clen replied that he sensed a presence following them, coming from the direction of the student dorm. It was quite a provocative presence. At that moment, the dorm door opened. Alicia instinctively braced herself, assuming a defensive stance, asking if that was the source of the presence. Clen immediately struck her on the head, scolding her not to be on guard every time. Alicia yelped in pain. He told her not to make a move without his command. From the dorm doorway stepped a boy, visibly awkward and nervous. Despite his nervousness, the boy introduced himself as Edison Lou Craft from Slada, a country located by the Eastern Sea. He said it was a pleasure to meet them. Alicia and Clen both turned to look at him. The other students overheard his introduction and laughed. They questioned why he was introducing himself like that, mocking his awkward demeanor. One student urged the others not to be so mean, pointing out that Edison probably didn't know much about their school since he came from the countryside. Still, the laughter continued as they remarked that it was their first time meeting someone from Slaughter. A small girl pushed her way forward from behind Edison, commenting that his greeting was good. She said that first impressions were the most important thing and that it took courage to stand out enough to be remembered. She added that it was true people from Slaughter were known for being tall and slender. Introducing herself, she said she was Sarasa Lu-Ira Lafoka, hailing from Org, the Great Western Forest. The students were surprised, noting how incredibly small she was, even smaller than the first-year students at their school. Sarasa scolded Edison, telling him to stand properly, which prompted some students to remark that she sounded like an old lady despite her size. Whispers spread among the students about Sarasa being the only student who had brought along a servant. This revelation shocked those nearby. It suggested she must be of high status. Speculation followed that the fifth years wouldn't be pleased about these unusual newcomers. Some were relieved that they were already in their sixth year and wouldn't have to deal with them directly. Sarasa then asked Edison how he managed to come there. She had heard that Slaughter was even stricter with magic than Haydn, and she wondered if he had a special reason for attending Solsein. Edison lowered his head and remained silent, unable to answer her question. Meanwhile, two men were on their way out of the dorm and shoved Edison aside. With arrogance, they called them country bumpkins and told them to get out of the way and stop blocking the path. One of them insisted that this was the path for young nobles from Estlin. They told them to crawl and make way. These two were Tigel Bluey and Leon Bluey. It was noticeable that the two looked alike, which made Sarasa ask if they were twins. Leon retorted by asking what if they were. Sarasa also noticed that they were not wearing hats, to which they replied that they would never be caught wearing something that ugly. While standing at the dorm entrance, one of them commented that the place was disappointing. They questioned what it even meant for that place to be considered the most prestigious school in the world. The Royal University of Esleburg, they said, was far better than this remote, piss-poor countryside filled with nothing but country folk. Magic wasn't worth it. If the level of magic was only child's play, then there was no point in coming here. The students were irritated by their remarks and wondered what was wrong with them and whether they had come there just to pick fights. At the back, Edison reminded them that it was only their first day as exchange students. However, Tigel didn't care. They weren't there to make friends. Alicia grew curious and asked Clen if he was referring to those twins. They really did seem provocative, she noted. Yet Clen's eyes remained fixed on the door. Another student came out of the fifth-year dorm but walked straight past the exchange students. Tigel stopped him. When asked why, Tigel complained that the student had intentionally bumped into him. His brother agreed. The student replied that he hadn't noticed him at all, since he had no presence whatsoever. He added that standing in front of the door was dangerous. Tigel and Leon were annoyed and intrigued by this. They asked if what he was implying was that he wanted to fight them. They asked for his name first. The student introduced himself as Ray Forrester. Ray then asked what they meant by them, implying whether it was 2 against 1. Was that how they did things in Estlin? Well, he said, at least they now knew their place. Leon told him not to be stupid, insisting that what they meant was he could bring as many people as he wanted. Ray let out a sigh and said that they were already causing trouble there, so they should move to a different location. Following him out of the dorm was Mary, who commented that there was no need for Ray to accept that challenge, and that it was his competitive nature that made things unnecessarily difficult. Andrew remained quiet at her side. From the upper floor, Rod overheard talk about the duel between the Estlin twins and Ray from the 5th year. They could hardly believe it, as classes hadn't even begun yet. Rod grew worried because of this. He stopped in his tracks, recalling the conversation he had with the king of Estlin before he left for Solsein. He had been shown documents regarding the exchange students. Rod hadn't expected to see the names Tigel and Leon of the Bluey family twins listed there. The two were notorious for being troublemakers. The king himself acknowledged this, saying it was true that they brought trouble wherever they went. There had been multiple assault incidents involving them, and 3 of their victims were teachers. One of those victims remained paralyzed to this day. Rod respectfully asked King Uriel why he was sending such students to Solsein. Wouldn't the 2 of them jeopardize their mission? The king replied that no matter who they sent, they would inevitably be treated with hostility there. That was why they were sending people who were undesirable and attention-grabbing to conceal their true purpose. This was also the reason they would not inform them that Rod would be entering as a teacher, nor reveal their actual objective. With troublemakers of that level, even if they got hurt, the king doubted Rod would sympathize or compromise their mission for them. Rod then asked if that meant that if the twins were injured or possibly about to be killed in Solsein, they would not help them. The king confirmed this. However, he added that ignoring it completely would not be natural either. He reminded Rod that it was necessary to maintain balance. He was sure that even Lord Bluey would be happy if those two nuisances were gone. Back in the present, because of what the king had said, Rod could not react. He thought to himself that he had not expected the twins to run into trouble so soon, on their very first day there. The Bluey twins had already moved to a different location for their confrontation with Ray. Tygal asked if he was really sure he would face them alone. Leon wondered why no one was coming to help him and questioned if that meant he had no friends. Ray threw his hat aside and told them to speak for themselves. Ray's companions remained silent on the sidelines, merely watching. Alicia commented that this has become troublesome. Meanwhile, it seemed Clem had found what he was referring to. He pointed to Ray and said that while he might have a cool face, inside he was the complete opposite. He likened him to a volcano hiding fire within, like magma. Even among the heroes who had come to fight him, including Alicia, there was no one else like this. Because of that, he found him very interesting. Alicia was impressed to hear those words coming directly from Clem. Back at the fight, Ray asked what the twins' problem was and told them to hurry up and attack him. If they did not finish before classes began, everyone watching would surely get in trouble. The twins took their stances and both threatened to wipe the snarl off his face. The two pulled out vials, one containing powder and the other containing liquid. Ray recognized them as magic or powder, and the liquid needed to activate it. He was unimpressed, saying that medicine magic was technology from 2 generations ago in Bullet. The twins did not care and simply told him to shut up. They threw the powder and liquid, and the containers shattered when they collided with each other. As a result, a strong wind formed between them. Sarasa was curious about this. Edison noticed that the wind was being sucked inward to the center, creating a vortex using a chemical formula that generated an intense updraft. Sarasa could not make sense of what point that served in combat. While the intense vortex was raging, Tygal pulled out something else. This time it was dust. He said that this was what he wanted to use. Even then, Ray showed no sign of fear upon seeing the paper bag Tygal had taken out. Tygal pressed it, causing the dust inside to explode. It was a special blend of ash, silver, and magic ore. As a result, countless copies of them appeared all around to confuse the enemy. They called this attack Mirror Storm. However, Ray was neither worried nor threatened by it. Meanwhile, Sarasa and Edison were greatly impressed by how the twins multiplied, as was Alicia. Leon remarked for Ray's information that the center of that vortex would follow him and that he would not be able to escape the technique. The twins, along with their clones, took their stances and surrounded Ray. They taunted him, saying only 2 among them were real, and asked if he could identify or locate which ones they were. Ray simply raised his right hand, and a strange symbol appeared on the back of his palm. The twins grew alarmed when he uttered L. They did not expect the wind around them to suddenly intensify. Their rotation sped up rapidly. Ray explained that the crest he used was state acceleration, which accelerated the state of the target. After that, he would layer a formula on top of it. He drew a triangle with his left hand in the air, followed by a spiral symbol, and then chanted Shira. A swirling pattern formed in the sky, signaling impending rain as it darkened. Moments later, heavy rain poured down. Ray explained that Shira was a formula that condensed moisture in the air to produce rainfall. The watching students were shocked that it was raining and grew anxious. However, Edison noticed that they were not getting wet. Sarasa remarked that it seemed as though the rain was falling only on them. Ray added that those 2 were the ones who had created the updraft, so naturally he would not get wet since he was at the center of the vortex. He said that their technique had been dispelled, but asked if they knew what happened to rain clouds formed by powerful updrafts. The twins were drenched, and concern became evident on their faces as they realized what he meant. They looked up and noticed thunder rumbling above them. Ray stated that what they were now witnessing was Crest formula chanting magic. As the weather above continued to worsen, Ray explained that the medicine formula was already 2 generations old and required far too much time and effort. Because of that, it was out of the question. The type of magic he used was superior even to crystal formula, which, while powerful, lacked safety and versatility. Of course, this also required aptitude and the ability to store magical power within their bodies. At this point, it was practically like ancient magic that had already been lost. Clen was delighted to witness this, as it was the closest thing to the magic of Toa. Meanwhile, Leon was terrified because of the constant lightning striking above them. The surrounding students fled in panic, certain that Ray was about to drop the lightning down on them. They could hardly believe what they were seeing. Even his friends, including Mary, had already run away. The twins looked at each other and suggested they should run as well. Trembling in fear, they shouted that Ray was insane. Ray declared that if they continued to remain sane, they would never become strong in magic. Symbols appeared in both of his eyes before he chanted Rizzle and traced downward through the air with his left hand. At that moment, Rod suddenly shouted for them to stop. From behind him, a streetlight came flying and spun through the air. Someone had thrown it between the twins, and Ray did not expect to see a streetlight there. The lightning he had summoned struck the streetlight instead, blasting the twins away in opposite directions. Smoke rose from the streetlight as the sky gradually began to clear. The person who had thrown the streetlight was Nay. Sweating heavily, she was relieved that she had arrived just in time. The twins noticed and realized it was the teacher who had done it, while Ray merely looked in her direction. Rod asked Leon and Tigel if they were able to stand, but they snapped at him to shut up and leave them alone. Rod fell silent and let out a sigh. Meanwhile, Alicia was stunned and noticed something about the two. Rod stepped between them and stated that using magic outside of class was prohibited according to school rules. Because of that, the 3 of them were to accompany him to the teacher's office. Ray did not protest and simply agreed. The twins, however, were seething with anger and reluctantly complied. Rod then told the other students to hurry along since classes were starting. They rushed off to follow. On the way to class, Sarasa remarked that the show had been extremely interesting. Clen turned and told Alicia that they should leave as well. She followed after him. Clen crossed paths with the group Rod had summoned as he walked. He simply smiled while Ray glanced at him from the side. Inside the chapel in Solsein, the headmaster, Cardinal Aero Romain, entered. He walked straight toward the right door located beside the altar. Upon opening it, a staircase leading underground was revealed, and that was his destination. He came to a stop there. Meanwhile, someone had been secretly observing him. It was Mikkel. Hidden from sight, he was following the headmaster. Based on his observations, the headmaster always went down to the underground room after the morning assembly around this time. He had gone ahead to investigate, but found only a small prayer altar inside. He noticed nothing unusual about the room's walls, floor, or ceiling. This made him wonder if the headmaster truly only went there to offer prayers to God. It seemed unrelated to Dorel's secret room. When he realized that classes were about to begin, he knew he had to leave, so he exited the place. Moments later, the door the headmaster had entered through opened, and the headmaster suddenly peered out from there. Classes had already begun. The exchange students introduced themselves to the class, with Alicia going first. She said she was pleased to meet them and introduced herself as Alyssa Slayhunt from Haydn. Next was Clen, who introduced himself as Kryn Bardis, also from Haydn, and said he was happy to meet them as well. After the introductions, the teacher announced that those were all the exchange students for their year. Sarasa was staring at Clen because he had caught her attention. She had not expected that someone else there also had horns, and Clen's were even twisted. The teacher commented that they had quite a unique group here, so he was sure everyone would easily remember who they were. Starting that day, they were all fifth-year students, and there would be no special treatment just because they were exchange students. He encouraged them to compete with one another to improve themselves. Ray and Mary remained silent, watching the exchange students, while Tigel and Leon were visibly irritated. They noticed that Ray was not even looking at them, which made them curious about whom he was watching. When they followed his gaze, they saw that he was staring at Clen. Clen only smiled as Ray's eyes remained fixed on him. The teacher announced that their first period would be magic class. Everyone would be doing practical work, so he instructed them to head to the north grounds of the school building. The fifth-year students proceeded there for their class. The teacher in charge of magic was Lang Face, and he stated that this was their first meeting with the exchange students. He cleared his throat and introduced Nay as Ms. Chiffonritz, their new assistant teacher. She would be handling the demonstrations. She seemed nervous as she stood there. Lang said that she was a practitioner of crystal magic, which had shown the most progress in recent years. She already had a spell formula suitable for practical use. However, crystal magic had the drawback of being compatible with only a small percentage of people, which was why it could not be adopted for class use. Lang explained that what he would be teaching was the most up-to-date magic, which anyone could use once they learned it. This was staff-based incantation magic. When he picked up a staff, the Bluey twins could not believe that this was what they would be using instead of the crest-based magic Ray had used against them. Tygel glanced at him and grew irritated again. Upon hearing this, the teacher asked if he was the student who had caused trouble earlier that morning. He explained that crest-based magic was the highest form of magic, granted only to those who had completely mastered staff-based magic, and to those chosen by God. That was a level unreachable by troublemakers like them in just 2 years. If not for the Emperor's request, he said he would have expelled them immediately. They should be grateful they were still being allowed to learn staff-based magic there. He pointed at the two and warned them not to forget that he had the authority to expel any student who caused problems in class. Anyway, he said, they would now begin the lesson for the day. He called for Miss Chiffonritz and instructed her to distribute the staffs to them. She quickly followed his orders. Meanwhile, it was clear the twins were displeased, humiliated in front of the class. While the fifth-year students were in class at the North Grounds, Rod peered from a classroom and observed. He thought about how the first period for the fifth year was magic class and recalled how terrified he had been because of the twins earlier that morning. It seemed that the other exchange students, the boy from Sarada and the girl from Ogu, knew nothing about the true purpose of that exchange program. When he noticed the two from Haydn, he figured something out. He had not realized it earlier when they crossed paths, but he recognized that boy, Clen. He remembered that he was the one who saved the royal infant in front of the royal hearth. He wondered if Queen Dowager Tawara had entrusted him with anything. When he saw Alicia, he questioned to himself if she was a hero. Her eyes and hair were just like the hero Alicia's, but as far as he recalled, she had never been that small. Moreover, she was not even from Haydn. He wondered if it could be nothing more than coincidence. Suddenly, someone called out to him, Mr. Burns, saying she was done answering the board. Rod's attention shifted back to the class, and he thanked her. He confirmed the answer was correct and told her to sit down. For his next question, he asked what year Bolid had gained its independence as a nation. Back in the fifth-year class, as Nay was about to hand the staves to Alicia and Clen, sweat formed on her forehead from nervousness. In her mind, she thought that two extremely dangerous individuals were standing together, and she felt alarmed. She knew this was the hero Alicia. Even if she could not comprehend how she had become small, she was certain it was her. As for Clen, she thought he was extremely dangerous. Just imagining those eyes watching her made her heart feel as if it were being scorched, like a slug sprinkled with salt. She repeatedly told herself in her head that he was dangerous. She asked herself if she should just run away. No, perhaps she should report it. However, she wondered to whom she could even report. She was there under the Emperor's orders, but she had no idea who was on their side. She was there to investigate, which meant talking to the school staff was out of the question. Because she had been standing frozen in front of them for so long, lost in thought, Alicia pointed at the stave she was holding. Nay was startled and thanked her. Alicia then stepped closer to her, which surprised her even more. Nervously, she heard Alicia whisper a warning, saying it would be better if she did not reveal anything. Alicia then looked behind her and glanced at Clen, whose aura felt strange as his eyes fixed on her. Nay felt uneasy and creeped out because of it. Meanwhile, Alicia was delighted that they finally had staves. Clen commented if that wasn't just a stick. Tears welled up in Nay's eyes as she realized that from the very start, there had never been a safe place in the school. Still, she thought that did not matter for her mission now. She decided she would simply pretend she had seen nothing. Nay returned to Lang and called him Mr. Face, telling him she was done distributing them. He thanked her for her hard work. The exchange students carefully observed the staff. Sarasa was impressed, while Edison noticed that a polished magic crystal was embedded on its end. The twins, meanwhile, thought that all they had to do was master it first. Lang explained that the staff functioned like an amplifier. The magic crystal attached to the staff supported the user's magical essence. In other words, their magical power and the aptitude needed for incantations. This allowed even those without magical ability to use magic, although it had limits on how much it could be used. Alicia was amazed by the staff, while Clen closely examined the one he was holding. Lang added that, of course, those with inherent magical aptitude could use it more frequently and with greater power. That was where talent came in, something they could not overcome with effort or technique alone. Therefore, they should accept it gracefully. They were told to move on to practical skills after the brief overview of the staff-based system for the exchange students. Lang requested assistance from Nay for the demonstration. She agreed and positioned herself in front of a lamp. Lang explained that what they were seeing before them was the eternal lamp, a lamp that never went out and was created through pharmaceutical magic. The recipe used certain compounds, pulverized magic ore, and oil extracted from special insects. First, they would intentionally extinguish its light. Nay turned a mechanism to do this. Their task for the day was to reignite the lamp using an incantation without opening it. Nay took her stance to demonstrate. Lang told everyone to watch closely. The formula, he said, was a perfect circle, and the word to be chanted was fel. If the circle was distorted or the pronunciation was incorrect, it would not work. Nay demonstrated by drawing the circle and chanting fel. Moments later, the lamp's light suddenly ignited. The teacher asked everyone to applaud, calling it a truly exemplary demonstration of incantation magic. Sarasa was greatly impressed, while it seemed nothing new to Mary and Andrew. In Nay's thoughts, she was relieved that she had practiced beforehand. The teacher cleared his throat and announced that anyone who wanted to try could step forward. This was the most basic of basic incantation magic. If they could not manage it, they would not advance to the next level, so they should keep that in mind. A boy stepped forward and volunteered to go first. He drew a perfect circle and said fel. As a result, the lamp lit up. The teacher said Gilbert passed. Next, a girl stepped up to try. She repeatedly said fel, but nothing happened. Lang commented that her circle had been distorted, which was why it failed. Poem was disappointed, and the teacher advised her to practice drawing perfect circles on paper 1,000 times. As the fifth-year students took turns attempting the task, Alicia noticed that even the current students were struggling with it. Clen then told her to try it. She was shocked at his suggestion. Clen wanted to see if someone like her, who lacked magical aptitude, could truly use magic with the staff. He urged her to raise her hand. Alicia had no choice but to comply. She volunteered, drawing everyone's attention. The students murmured, commenting that the exchange student was going to try. Some remarked on how bold she was and wondered if someone from Haydn could actually pull it off. Another pointed out that they had come after the war, so maybe that was why she was confident. Meanwhile, Edison cheered her on from behind. As Alicia prepared, she told herself that this was for Haydn's honor. She could not afford to give a shameful performance. She had no choice but to believe in the staff. She only needed to trust it. She drew the circle and said fel, but it did not work. Returning to her spot, Alicia felt humiliated. It had not worked at all. She admitted to herself that she did not feel anything from the staff. Clen commented that it was not a good first impression. Someone nearby laughed, saying that it really was a difficult task. He introduced himself as Nathan Fran. He said that it might not be so easy to remember someone plain like him. Alicia then asked if it's okay for him to speak to them in a friendly way, since they were exchange students. Truthfully, he had been cautious around her earlier, but now he felt more at ease knowing she was on their side. That was probably the reason why. Alicia wondered what he meant by their side. Nathan insisted that magical prowess was what truly determined status there. Suddenly, someone called for them to look at what Mary had done. When she performed the incantation magic, she easily produced a dignified and stable light. Meriwether passed because of that. The same was true for Andrew Whipp, who managed to create an interesting dancing light with the lamp. Alicia anticipated who would undoubtedly be the most impressive of all. Nathan clarified that Mary and Andrew were the top 2 and top 3 in their year. Alicia was amazed at how effortlessly they accomplished it. When Ray's turn came, The light he produced was extraordinary. The glow spread out, and its brilliance circled around them. Everyone was impressed. Even without using a crest, he was the strongest among them. The reason he was not punished for what had happened earlier that morning was because he was special. Here, one's rank was almost entirely dependent on magical strength. Ray forced her past for that reason, and he was praised, being told that what he did was splendid. In Nay's mind, she thought that boy was incredibly impressive and might even surpass Maynard's magical sense. Back to Nathan. He said that the school believed magic was what would shape the future of the world. Those like them, who could not be like Ray, would surely always remain at the bottom. He then declared that he would try. He might fail again, but he would keep doing it. He raised his hand, surprising his classmates. Someone commented that it was reckless of him to follow right after Ray. Even so, Nathan said he refused to remain at the bottom for the rest of his life. Nathan positioned himself in front of the lamp, determined to prove that he could do it if he simply tried. Mary kept a close watch on him as Nathan focused intently. But before he could finish the incantation, the Bluey twins suddenly shoved him aside. In a rush, they told him to move and called him a third-rate nobody. Since Ray had finished, it was their turn next. Nathan protested that it was still his turn, but Leon told him to shut up. As Ray stepped back, he glanced over, unable to believe they were causing trouble again. The twins simultaneously declared that they would crush Ray's smug attitude. Both of them took their positions and drew circles with their staves. The teacher looked irritated but admitted that, at the very least, their circles were clean. Fired up, the two shouted fell in unison. As a result, the eternal lamp in front of them shattered. They were extremely proud of what they had done and boasted about it. However, Lang shouted that they had failed and called them fools. Incantations were not meant to be shouted, nor were they supposed to be layered or overlapped. The light they were supposed to produce had exploded because their magical powers had simply collided. It was, he said, the most disgraceful result imaginable. The twins were shocked by his words and could not accept it. And since the lamp had been destroyed, they could no longer continue the practical lesson. They would return to the classroom and use the remaining time for theory instead. The students were disappointed, especially those who had not yet tried. The teacher insisted that those fools needed to be taught proper manners and magic. He called Nay and instructed her to collect the staves she had handed out, and she complied. As they returned the staves to her, the students were irritated. They wondered what was wrong with those twins, saying that just the fact they came from Eslan was already annoying. In their frustration, they called them trash and walked away. One of them stepped forward and asked what they were talking about and if they had a problem. A classmate shot back that of course they did. Meanwhile, Sarasa and Edison were disappointed that they had not even gotten to try, since they had really wanted to experience it. Someone then commented, questioning what the twins had been thinking, casting at the same target at the same time. It was creepy, they said, simply because they were twins. They were probably failures individually, so they had to rely on each other. That comment enraged the twins. They demanded that whoever said it come forward. Leon grabbed Nathan, demanding to know who he was calling a failure and if he was the one who said it. Nathan insisted it was not him. Mary then intervened, telling them to stop. This was not playtime, she said, and this was not the place to train mongrels like them. It was extremely irritating that they were already weak in magic, yet could not stop talking. That was double the annoyance. The twins bristled with anger and asked what she had just said. Mary replied that she simply preferred silence. When it was too noisy, she said, it ruined both her ears and her mind. A symbol appeared in her eyes as she threatened that she would hunt them. Alicia was shocked, while Clen noticed the strong pressure emanating from her. The twins said nothing further. In their fury, they walked off and shoved Nathan aside. Mary approached Nathan and told him that if he were a Solsein student, he would not let himself be intimidated by people like them. That was pathetic, she said. She walked back toward the classroom, leaving Nathan standing still, disappointed in himself. Alicia approached Nathan and said that what happened was rough, and he agreed. He admitted that it was his fault anyway because of how pathetic he was. He apologized and said he would head off first. Alicia wondered if he would be okay. Clen then asked her what was wrong and if her hero complex was acting up again. Curious, Alicia asked what he meant by hero complex. Clen explained that it was her tendency to want to help those in need and her inability to leave the weak behind, that kind of sickness. Alicia protested, saying that it was only normal to act that way as a person. But Clen replied that he knew nothing about what it meant to be normal as a person. If magical power was the basis of rank there, Alicia was ranked even lower than Nathan. Could someone at the very bottom uncover Dorel's secret room? No, he said. Could they solve the mystery of Toa? Also no. If she was worried, she should keep it to herself. Alicia then asked if he himself could use magic. Clen wondered about that too. He pointed the staff upward, drew a circle, and chanted fell. As a result, the staff he held split apart. Clen remarked that it seemed he was not compatible with that staff thing. Nay was caught off guard when she saw the staff explode from what he had done. They tossed their staffs into the box Nay was carrying while Alicia teased Clen, saying that he was not good at it either and that, just like her, he was at the bottom. Clen walked away and told her to be quiet. He said he still needed to understand the very mechanism of magic, since he would eventually have to teach Luna. Once again, Clen sensed a faint presence similar to that of Toa there. He also detected it in the magic used by the top 3 students in their class. They glanced back at him. Clen insisted that if the mystery of Dorel's secret room was hidden there, he would definitely search for it and uncover it. Nay stood frozen in place, unable to move. Sweat formed on her forehead as she realized she could clearly hear everything they were saying. They paid no attention to her, which left her disheartened, and she collapsed. That night, Solsein was quiet. Nathan could be seen entering the chapel. He walked straight toward the door beside the altar. When he saw the staircase leading underground, he stopped, troubled by something weighing on him. From the small altar within, a voice called him a lost lamb and told him to pray to God. A symbol was shown from a book held by the one speaking, and Nathan was ordered to confess his sins.